Banjothon 2013, one of the, what I consider, and many people consider, one of the real icons in the world of both bluegrass instruments and flathead Gibsons. This is Harry Sparks from Cincinnati, Ohio.
No,
Harry?
I'm not from Cincinnati, Ohio.
Okay.
I'm from Ryland Heights, Kentucky.
South?
25 miles south of Cincinnati.
Well, hey, that's a whole different story.
It is.
Because those in, well, we won't go there, okay? Tell us a little bit of how you got interested in bluegrass music and kind of the evolution into the finding of so many good quality instruments and so many people that have been have come to you for those instruments.
One of the funny things that happened to me is I was just getting, I guess, graduating from high school, or the summer after I graduated from high school, somewhere along that period of time. I was building hot rods and was pretty much an annoying person, and I had some buddies, and we heard that there was going to be a hillbilly band. Jeff Howell's going to come in and cause trouble.
Are you actually giving an interview?
Yeah, and I'm not going to tell anything about you, I promise.
It's okay, Jeff. You're going to be next, okay? Because now I know that you're here.
Hey, I'll tell you what. If you want me to, I bought the Wade Maynard Granada, so
sure.
I'll be happy to talk about that.
This is good.
In fact, he's playing it in that room.
Yeah. We're gonna finish Harry, and then I'll come get you.
Yeah, call me.
Okay.
Harry actually is the one that you actually got me into this.
You have to get in line. There's about 6 or 8 people that said that to me here today. I don't feel comfortable. It's like I think somebody's going to try to shoot me outside for the misery I've caused them.
Well, I think you were very influential in the.
That's what we're recording right now. The influence that he's had on all of us.
Yeah.
That's stranger than fiction.
He taught me how to lie and cheat.
No. Wait a minute. I gotta stop. I gotta stop the video now on that one.
Yeah, there we go. Yeah, sure.
I'll come get you, Jeff.
Okay. Well, anyway, a strange thing happened, and we heard there was a hillbilly band that was going to be playing out at the drive-in theater, and we thought it would be fun to go out and torment them. So 3 of us got in our hot rod and drove out to the drive-in theater, and we pulled up, and little did we know it was Lester Flatt, Earl Scruggs, and the Foggy Mountain Boys. Well, we got right up there in the front row getting ready to do some cat calls and aggravations, and they were milling around on top of the concession building, and they had their microphones and speakers set up out there, and a great big tour bus, which was, you know, one of those old Freightliner things, whatever they call them. Anyway, Earl Scruggs turned around and planted that banjo in that microphone, and he hit that thing, and I was stunned. I was like hit by lightning.
Yes.
I thought, my God, what has happened? That was the most wonderful thing I ever heard. Well, one of my buddies started to holler, and I said, shut up. This is phenomenal. And came to find out later it was Foggy Mountain Breakdown.
Okay, there we are.
And he just burned it up. Then they sang, and then they played for probably an hour. It was about all the show was. And when it was over, I was sorry it was over. And I left, and I asked people all over town, boy, did you hear those guys? And nobody knew what I was talking about.
Right.
So time passed, and I mentioned it to people over time, and nobody knew what the hell I was talking about. So I come to the University of Cincinnati to go to architecture school, and in the meantime, I've learned to play the guitar pretty mediocre. Still am a pretty mediocre guitar player, but I play a little rhythm. And sang with some guys. We were doing folk music and silly stuff like that. And we got invited to a party one night in Cincinnati. And that was my freshman year at architecture school up there. And somebody put an album on, and it was Flatt and Scruggs. And I spun around and I said, that's it. And everybody looked at me and said, what are you talking about? That's it. That's what I heard that night. What is that? And they said, well, that's bluegrass music, stupid. Where have you been? And I said, well, I don't know why, but I just couldn't connect back with it for 4 years there.
Right.
It slipped by me without being tied to it. But that's what it was. So we started talking about it, and they said there's a band playing down in Walnut Street in Cincinnati, and there was a man named Walter Hensley playing the 5-string. Earl Taylor was playing the mandolin. Jim McCall was playing the guitar, and boat whistle, they called him, Vernon McIntyre, whose son's still in the business, actually bought my own music store eventually. But we went down there that night and sat there and said, finally found this music. And I was just enamored with everything about bluegrass music. It just was, everything about it sounded good to me. So we went down there, and they were kind enough to let us get up and play a little folk music on the stage with them and silly stuff like that. And I asked Jim McCall, could you show me how to play that rhythm on the Martin guitar you've got there? And of course then I had to hunt down a Martin guitar. I had this stupid ass Goya.
Yeah, right.
I've got a Martin D18, which I wish I still had. It was a great guitar. And I've learned to play rhythm guitar from Jim McCall. And then I started learning to sing, and I always remember when I first sat down, I would play Flat and Scruggs records, which still my favorite kind of music there is Flat and Scruggs. Love all these other bluegrass bands, but Flat and Scruggs
That's it.
is home. And so I sat down with this D18 in front of the record player, and on every tune, it seemed I had to retune the guitar to match up with the with the records, because they were all wacky. I don't know whether they recorded out of tune or the speed of the record or what, but I did it, and what there were some songs that were relatively slow, but I always was amazed at how comfortable they sounded playing bluegrass. And when I tried to play along with them, I realized they were flying. They were flying.
Made it look easy.
Yeah, they just drifted along. Lester sang like he had all day. Earl played, like it felt like there were 15 minutes between the notes. And you sit down and try to play rhythm with them, and I thought my arm was going to fly off. Well, that's what started it all. And so, the banjo player in our band, we finally formed a little band called the Rabbit Hash Ramblers. We played a gig in Rabbit Hash, and somebody said, "What's the name of your band? We got to announce you." And we said, "We don't have a name." And they said, "You got to have a name. We can't announce you without a name." And I said, "What did you say the name of this place was again?" They said, "Rabbit Hash, Kentucky." I said, "Go tell them we're the Rabbit Hash Ramblers." Well, that stuck for years. But this guy had a Maybell banjo with a 5-string neck that somebody made in Cincinnati. It was just awful. But you could listen to all this music that obviously had master tones on, and his banjo just wasn't anywhere in the league with those instruments. And so, being inquisitive, I tried to find out what's going on. And one day I was in Amos Chandler was an old man who repaired fiddles for the symphony there in Cincinnati, but he also did mediocre work, bless his heart. He was a nice man, but he really just didn't care about banjos and guitars, but he did them because he needed money.
Right.
And I went into his store, and there was a man named Brinkman. I believe his first name was Ralph, but I'm not positive about that. But anyway, he was tuning a banjo in the back. And I mean to tell you, I never heard so much racket in my life. I went back there and said, "What is that?" And it was a Style 3 flathead master tone with a Style 5 tenor neck stuck in it.
Is that right? Wow.
Now, I wasn't smart enough in those days to know that the stretcher band was wide where the neck came up to it, whereas a tenor stretcher band is narrow.
Right.
And that gap was wider on that. Well, I didn't know those kind of details in those days.
Right.
But I knew that banjo was a hoss.
Yeah, talk to you.
And I said, oh boy, would you sell that banjo? Any way we can beat you out of it? He said, there's only one way you can beat me out of that. I said, what's that? He said, I'd love to own a Florentine tenor. I said, those are the most expensive master tones there are. A little I knew about them those days. I said, yeah, but that's the only thing I'll trade for. So away I go, and everybody anybody you talk to will tell you that I may be the luckiest human being you've ever known. If you came up to me, Dave, and said, I'm looking for an original 3 flathead, but I want it to be a wreath pattern. I said, well, there will be one.
Yeah.
And oddly enough, I can't tell you what the price will be, but
Right.
there will be an opportunity. J.D. Crowe asked me one time, said, I finally decided I want a Granada. And I said, there will be one. 2 weeks later,
Right.
Tuttera
There it was.
called me,
There you go.
said, I've got a Granada body I need to sell. You want it? And J.D. now had the Granada. Well, that sort of thing was always happening. So I set out to find a Florentine, and within 2 weeks, I found one. And when we all laughed now when you hear the numbers, it was $325. And fortunately, I was able to start the money, and I bought the 14.
Right.
Marched right down there, and this guy was never so flabbergasted as to see me show up with a Florentine. I said, there, by damn, give me that banjo. Sure enough, he did.
Yeah.
So, I wish I had kept track of anything like this, but I have to think of where I was living at the time that these things happened to figure out when the years and dates were approximately, but
Right.
I didn't keep any records at all.
You were living life.
And so we got that 3 flathead, and I'm beginning to repair things. Mr. Chandler had drilled out the headstock for me to put a set of tuners on my D18 and chipped the back real bad where the drill press wasn't guarded by blocking on the front and back. And I was heartbroken. So finally I turned it over and fixed it and worked on it. And architects build models and all kinds of stuff. And then before that I used to build hobby stuff. So I always felt pretty comfortable with my hands. So I finally, out of frustration, fixed these big chips. And a friend of mine was a painter that did faux painting and taught me how to stain and touch up things. And I fixed my own guitar. And I came in one day and somebody says, isn't that the guitar that was busted? And I said, yeah. He said, well, who fixed it? And I said, I did. He said, you did? And he said, well, would you work on my guitar? I said, what's going on? He said, well, the bridge is coming up. I looked at it and I said, well, that's pretty simple. He said, I'll give you $10 to glue it back down. $10,
Yeah.
Big as your front yard in those days.
And your repair world was on.
That's how it started.
Really?
And
Right.
so anyway, there was a little episode earlier on where I found a guitar that had been wet in an abandoned house, and I put it back together. But that was one of these real cheap junk guitars. And hi, Tom.
Hey, didn't want to mess up.
Tom Adler's walked into the room. How are you,
Adler has
Tom?
left the building. Hey, David. Harry.
Harry's working us through his history of how he's evolved himself into the world of repair
All
and
right.
finding the banjos.
Cool. Finding the banjo.
Finding the banjos.
That's a trick.
Well, as we said not too long ago, said, whenever I wish for something, if somebody calls me and tells me they've got it, he's the one that had the conversion ring.
And
about
where did
the
you
time-
put that?
It's out there in the banjo.
Oh,
You can go out
you need
there.
to show it to me.
I will.
Yeah.
Terry, right now, okay, now that Tom's here in the room, give us an example of just some of the things that you're still doing in the instrument world, because I saw you last night with a 1940 D28.
Yes.
So you're still acquiring instruments, you're still finding
I think-
opportunities?
Dave, I'm 72 years old, And I really didn't think I'd buy another guitar, but there was always one instrument that I wanted. I was born in 1940,
Right.
and this is a 1940 Martin 28.
Right.
Needless to say, all of them were herringbones in those days.
Yeah.
But it's a phenomenal instrument, and it was very, very exciting to have the opportunity to buy it. And it just, if it hadn't been a 40, I don't give a dang what it was.
Yeah, you wouldn't have.
I wouldn't have bought it.
Right.
I've got a 42 D45 that's probably as good a Martin as there exists. So I don't need another guitar other
Right.
than I always kind of wanted a Earth Year D28. And
Yeah,
it
wonderful.
just happened to be the opportunities aligned. And
Just like you said earlier, you
eventually,
it
now
just
that
comes.
that
These
one didn't
things
happen
come
as
to you.
quickly as other things
Right.
have. There's been a couple of 1940s that I
Right.
looked at and I didn't take because they weren't clean enough for me, or
Right.
it didn't sound good, or they had a problem with something. But this one is a monster.
Yeah.
But anyway, back to the kind of stuff we were talking about. The banjos that we were running across, we couldn't afford to keep. And that banjo that I just told you about that I got from Brinkman
Right.
ended up being owned by J.D. Crowe, who still has it.
Okay. That's the 3.
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of his early recordings are with that banjo.
You bet.
But we did find an archtop 3, but in the diamond pattern, the old dark maroon, no
Right.
rings in the back of the resonator. And it was affordable. It was $125. And so a fellow that we knew, Bob White, and another fellow named Robbie Robinson were working
Columbus, Ohio.
in Columbus, Ohio, in the back of a store I believe was called Marty Lunzer or something like that. Somebody correct me a little bit on the pronunciation, but they had a workshop in the back, and the fella had set them up. So we went up there, and Robbie and Bob together were kind of working on things. And I don't remember who exactly made the neck. I think it was Robbie. And while I was there, he was the most generous man you'd ever want to know. And through a personal conversation one night when he was having a tough time about something, we became good friends. And there wasn't anything about what he was doing in repairs that he wouldn't share with me. He had no secrets as far as I was concerned. So he sat down and showed me how he inlaid and how he did fretwork and how he put this and how he did that and all that. Well, it was, something I believe I could do. So I got me a block of mahogany and a horseshoe rasp and a slab of Brazilian rosewood. We weren't even fooling. Indian rosewood in those days. They didn't even know what it was in existence. And built a banjo now. Several people were complimentary. J.D. Crowe said, "Would you build me one?" Yeah. So we'd sit in the shop and I'd whittle and he'd run his hand up down the neck. So that's what I'm looking for right there, and then we'd finish it. And we'd put inlays in them. And we built them out of Brazilian rosewood backs. I mean, you'd cave you in. Crowe thought maybe a heavy neck. Well, anyway,
Experimenting.
all this stuff was practice.
Right.
And in the meantime, we couldn't afford a flathead, and we knew the flathead sounded better than the archtops. There was a man named Lee Vance in Willoughby, Ohio. And Lee Vance was turning out of sheet brass a conversion tone ring. But it was thin sounding. It was not really a strong sounding, but it, and he was the guy who said to me in the Ken Mill Cafe, we were listening to the bluegrass there at the Ken Mill, and he said to me, the reason I did this, to keep people from chopping the tops off these master tones and putting these deeper tone rings in them, because there was a guy named Steve something in Columbus making full depth tone rings. Can't think of his name right, come on. But Steve was his first name. But
Ryan?
anyway,
Was that Ryan?
yeah, Steve Ryan.
Yeah,
that's
Steve
it.
Ryan. Yeah.
And so he was making these Ryan rings, and when people were cutting a 1/4 inch off the top, roughly, of wood off the shell of these things. So I liked what Lee said about making these conversion rings, but the daggone things didn't sound good. So our banjo player at the time is named Randy Wakefield, no kin to Frank. Randy's brother was in the engineering department and was studying metallurgy over at University of Cincinnati, and they had a thing called a spectroscope. And it would read the molecular composition of anything that was stuck under it. It didn't matter whether it was steel or lead or brass or bronze or whatever it was. And so we took 2 samples, and there's a hole in the tone ring where the lag bolt goes through. And rather than fool with any other part of the tone ring and deface it in any way, we went into that hole, and he said, I don't need just a scrape. We went in there first, got the chrome out, or the nickel.
Right.
And then we did another cut with a real sharp, and I actually used an X-Acto knife, brand new blade.
Yeah, get to the base metal.
And I got this real fine shaving out of that place. We had a 40-hole tone ring that came out of the 3. It was sitting over here. We had the Willoughby tone ring in that banjo at the time, and had found out that it really wasn't that successful. So we took the 2 shavings, and the 3 that JD ended up with, we took a shaving out of that. Again, just I mean, so ever thin and sliced. Gave both of them to him, not being smart and saying which was which in an envelope. We thought later, said, oh, that was stupid, because we got them mixed up. We didn't know which was which.
Yeah. Real science going there. Yeah.
Well, the good news was, the guy came back and said they're made out of the exact same stuff. He said it's a formula that's in the books. He said it's been in the books. It's called German bell bronze. And to do it, you have to have 20% tin and 20% copper, or 80% copper. And he said the copper and the tin that go into the good stuff like this, and he said this was the good stuff, is what's called virgin ingot. Now, if you go down and just buy a block of tin, and you don't ask for virgin ingot, in those days, let's say it was $10 a pound, then virgin ingot is 20 bucks a pound. Well, if you don't ask for virgin ingot, you get the $10, and it's 15% impure. So you got 15% of stuff floating around in there that you have no idea what it is. You buy virgin ingot, you got 5%. You'll get traces of everything under the sun in the tin and the copper. But it's a lot purer, and that's what's called German bronze, bell bronze. Then he went on to say, there is no magnesium in there. And we read up on foundries and founding or pouring bell bronze. They said, do not use magnesium flux. Because when they turn the bells, their ring will be work hardened, and it will make a much, much better sound if it doesn't have this magnesium in it, because it softens the metal so it will flow into the crevices. And as you know, when you look at the profile of a flathead tone ring, it's got a leg that goes down, that goes all the way from the crest of the tone ring to the bottom. It's a very long and thin thing. To get that to the bottom, that has to be poured fairly big. You can't pour that thin and get there. You'll have all kinds of pockets in there.
Yeah, surface imperfection.
So we learned all this from the metallurgy department at the University of Cincinnati. And unlike most hillbillies, I don't question that kind of advice. We said, fine, that's what we'll do. So we took the flathead tone ring and did a drawing of it, because architects and engineers can draw these things up, measure it to the thousandths. And we did a drawing, and basically all we did to create our tone ring is we took the J.D. Crowe tone ring and just pulled it back up so that it has the lower slope and would fit right on
The uncut rim.
an uncut archtop rim.
Right.
And further, we discovered something, and I was really tickled when I realized this, that if you put on most original banjos, at least all the ones that I've owned, if you put the head, the tone ring on the shell and pull down tight with your fingers, you can put a piece of paper between the bottom leg of the tone ring and the wood shelf that it sits against. It fits firmer on the inside than it does on the outside. So that inside lip sits down on top of the shell very firmly on original banjos, and they're all done that way. Well, again, did I invent anything? No. I just did this from observation, because the holy grail to me is the master tone flathead banjo. And I've been told I'm not a great historian, I don't know these things, but I believe Lord Lore designed it. At least I've been told that. And the ball bearing, the archtop, and the flathead tone rings were all his idea, they said. I don't know. I don't have any documentation to prove that.
Right.
But I've been told that by somebody. George Gruen, who's here today, would probably be better to ask than me.
Right.
Regardless, I just said that this banjo is so enormously successful that it serves us well to just do exactly what it is. And so I did everything I could to make that tone ring configuration replicate the full depth tone ring except shallower. I did not know that at that time there were a few low profile flatheads in existence. But we went on to do this, and we went down and found a place, and unfortunately, thanks to urban renewal and the EPA, no longer exists. But Central Brass was a little company that was as old-fashioned as you could ever imagine. And I went down there, and they made a pressure plate of the design, made it large enough they could pour to the bottom. We bought the virgin ingot. The guy choked on the fact that I was willing to pay the price for the virgin ingot and everything, and then began to produce low-profile turn rings in great numbers. We had one time we made 500. We were supplying them to Stuart McDonald and all kinds of people, and we just thought there's no end to this. And we got another request from Stu Mack for 500 more. And my partner, Mac Smith, balked on the investment. And I was in some ways being annoyed by other things that were going on, and I just said, you know, it's probably best if we just part ways. And I sold the music store to Mac, and he later sold it to Rich Hart, and Rich later sold it to Vernon McIntyre Jr.
Right.
But it was called the Famous Old Time Music Company, and there was a fiddler who played down at Renfro Valley who always came up to me and said, "Famous Old Time Harry Sparks," and shook my hand, you know, and everybody said, "What are you going to call this thing?" I said, "Famous Old Time Music Company." And they said, "What's famous about the company?" I said, "Nothing, it's the music that's famous."
Yeah, there you go. Absolutely.
So anyway, we made these tone rings, and there were quite a few of them around, and then I kind of got away from doing as much. I was building necks, I was doing all the repair work for all the music stores in Cincinnati, in the Famous Old Time Music Company out on Montgomery Road near Ridge. And they called the area Pleasant Ridge. And so I obviously wasn't making very much money, and I was working my buns off. And I was the only one in the company that was working very hard. And so I just decided it's time to go off and be an architect. But I've always had a shop in my basement, and everybody knows now that you bring a guitar to me to work on or something like that. I work on it, and if I have to buy a bridge or some part or something, or let's say put a new set of strings on it or something else, I'll charge you exactly what I paid for the part. But if I just dress the frets and hand it back to you, there's no charge. I don't charge anybody anything for any work in the shop. And that way I can tell you that I'm sorry I don't work on those.
There you go.
But that's the long and the short of it. I'm sure I've probably left a couple of chapters out, but I really always thank Robbie Robinson and the generosity he showed me, and Bob White, and how we made necks and how you build them and how you fit them to the bodies and all that. And there was tons of stuff that you just learned by doing.
Yeah. And Harry, what you've done is you've passed that generosity on. Okay?
I have no reason to save it
Right.
For some silly reason.
Yeah.
I mean, there are some people that do this stuff for a living, and
Right.
I can understand them maintaining a certain level of secrecy about how they accomplish certain things. But as far as me, it's just been a world of fun.
Yeah.
And some of the dearest friends that I've got in this world came from this music.
Those relationships.
And
Yeah,
from the being blown away by this phenomenal instrument, the flathead Banjothon. Now, there's a total composition in a bluegrass band of instruments, and I'm not just enamored with the flathead Banjothon. I've actually owned 3 lowers.
Right.
And currently own a nice F5 that Sam Bush gave me of his models.
Right.
And I've owned a large number of Martin D28s and various D18s and so forth, and still own a really nice covey of really lovely guitars that play well. Some new, some older. I take the new ones on places because they can be replaced. The old ones can't. And I just love all the instruments. I don't fool with fiddles. My brother Philip, who lives in Nashville, is the fiddle man in the family, and he likes to fool with fiddles.
Right.
He's I told you I'm a mediocre guitar player. He's a mediocre fiddler. And he's a pretty good feathered banjo player.
Yeah.
Both of us like to play old time music, which we always remind everybody that Ron Thomason said that old time music's just that far from not being able to pick it all.
Right. It's the next step up.
A fine
From not
line.
being, yeah.
Fine line.
You're right.
But every day is somehow or another affected by somebody I know calls me up and said, where could I find one of these? What are they worth?
Right.
How do you fix this? There's just a lot of conversation about musical instruments of all sorts and shapes.
You know what we're going to do next year? I'm going to send you a request, and we're going to talk about some very specific instruments. You talked about Crow's 3, but I'd like to talk about some, because those instruments that you've had have created that network of your relationships with a lot of people, even people that are here.
Regretfully, I have trouble remembering all that stuff.
That's the reason we need to work to capture some of it along the way, so that when I do this next year at this time, that we'll have it as a bit of a dialogue as already established, because I know if you're like me, suddenly something will come to me, and then if I jot it down, then I retain it.
Well, that's a good thought. I'll try to do that. It's just like some of the stories that JD told me about finding the no-hole flathead.
Right.
And trying to figure out how to get a neck in it, because it didn't have a neck when he bought it.
Right.
And he wasn't even sure he ought to buy it because he wasn't sure what it was going to sound like.
Sure.
And there's all kinds of stuff that goes around, like Earl Scruggs telling me one time, and fortunately I had the good luck of knowing him. I actually sold him some of the conversion rigs that I mentioned before.
Okay.
And I still remember to the minute when I picked up the phone at the music store, this man said, could I speak to Harry Sparks? And I said, yes, this is him. He says, hi, this is Earl Scruggs. And I just fell on the floor.
Right.
I had met him and said hello to him on several occasions before
Right.
at various shows, but for him to call me up was really stunning. And,
cool.
But anyway, that's sort of the here's and the there's, and I'll try to remember some more of this stuff for you in the future.
We'll work on that.
Okay.
Thank you very much. This is great.
You're welcome.
Sweet.
Cool stuff.